What we're going to do is we're going to place a bunch of these Figma objects inside Unity. We're going to get them placed around the canvas, and we're going to look at how the canvas resizes, how we bring in images, and how we set them up in the scene. So what we'll do to begin with is we'll export some of this stuff that we have here. Doesn't really matter what the name is right now. Obviously, you'll do a much better job of that because you're a designer, right? Design have the best naming system out there. So we have our rectangle and they're sitting inside there. And we turn that sprite into a 2D. We set the sprite mode to single. And we leave everything else as is. We press apply. And then inside the canvas, we right click, we press UI, image, and then we're going to call this box. We're going to make 100 of these. We've got the image sitting inside here, and we're going to drag the rectangle into that sprite box and set it to native size. And is the same size as we were building it inside Figma. So that's sitting up at this top left-hand corner. Right, so we have to kind of group things in a different way, kind of in groups, the same way that you do it in Figma. But there might be some inconsistencies inside Unity. Let's have a look. So firstly, what we can do to group things, this is a box and this contains an image element, but you can create empty groups. So if you go right click, create empty, and call this, box group top left. We'll drag it inside the canvas. We'll make sure that the position has been set to 0, 0, 0. This is the x-axis, the y-axis, and z is forward and back as well. So that has to be zeroed out. And then we drag the box and we put it inside there. So now we have a group that is not going to work because it's a transform, not a rect transform. That's okay. We add this, we'll go rect transform, and it converted the transform is when you want to change shapes inside the game on a 3D object, but what we want is a rect transform, which is different and is used to anchor things around in the 2D UI environment. So that's actually important. I'm going to keep that there. I'm not even going to edit that out. Right, but you can see now that I'm grabbing this group and then it's kind of hanging up the side here. So it's important that we remain clean when we build out our UI. So that it becomes easier to edit at a later stage. So what we'll do is we'll, connect this to the top corner because we know where this is going to live. If we look back at our Figma stuff, it's going to sit up in this top left-hand corner, and this whole thing is about 16 by 16 away from the edge. So we'll butt it up to the edge, and then we'll click on the box here, and we will, if we zero that out, it will go directly into the middle. Shortcuts here, we can bring up the anchors. This is anchors it to all different spots. You can see by holding down Alt and clicking on these, it anchors it to all different spots. And then so if it's anchored up to the top right, and I go and change the size of the whole box, you can see that it actually stays inside there. And you can see how that acts on this side as you shrink and grow. Okay, cool. We'll leave, let's say that the box up here, we're using rounded numbers. We'll go 900 by 280, and then we'll click, hold down Alt, and then click up in the top left. And that's going to anchor this box to the top left. We've got one box here, but inside our Figma design, we had 5 boxes and then one big box, right? So we could select box and just press Command D 5 times, and we've actually got all the elements there when you select them, but they're just not all ordered. So the first thing we need to do here is there's no auto layout that you can use that is as good as Figma's, but they do have their own system, and it's called horizontal layout group. So if we click on add component in the group, so we have this group and we want to say all the components inside this group to be laid out and spaced either horizontally or vertically. So we spell horizontal right, and we go horizontal layout group. We now have, they're now all sitting along as they should, as a typical auto layout. That's what you'd expect from Figma, right? So there's a few things that we have to that are a bit different to an auto layout, right? You'll see if I expand this and shorten it, it's not having a consistent padding, but it's kind of forcing the children inside the group to be expanding along with it. And that is not our intended behavior. So we get rid of child force expand and we untick it. And now it doesn't matter what size we make it, it's not going to move. And we'll do the same thing for the height. We don't want that to happen. Set this back to the 280 top left. So it was sitting 16 pixels from the corners. So left 16, top 16. And now we have things that are sitting perfectly spaced from each other. And we change the internal spacing was set to 16 here. So we can set the spacing here to 16. And we've got 5 perfectly spaced elements in here. The child alignment here right now is sitting to upper left, so it's starting from the upper left. If we wanted to start from the upper right, we can do that. The upper center, middle center, all the other options here if you want it to, be constrained to the bottom or constrained to the top. So upper left is what we are typically used to. We'll keep it on that. That's all we need. So let's how can we add the next thing? We've got this one here, which is 205 by 120. We could duplicate another one. Call this box leftmost box. Make it bigger, right? But you'll notice that when you zoom in, you're just stretching it. So you're not respecting the borders, because it's just an image. It's just going to stretch the hell out of it. So the way to fix that is 9 slicing. And 9 slicing is grabbing this image here. You'll probably need to install a 2D package. That's like a free plugin that comes with Unity. So we'll install that. Maybe we'll skip this. Who knows? Cool. And we'll get this little sprite editor here, right? And so what 9 slicing is going to do is allow us to stretch this any way we see fit. And it is only going to stretch the inside of these bounds. So it's not going to stretch that corner, not going to stretch that, not going to stretch that, not going to stretch that. So that allows us to keep these ornate and keep these radiuses respected. And then it expands everything else. To do that cleanly, you probably grab the border radius is 12. So you could set the left, right, top and bottom all as 12. And then press apply. This image now, this can no longer be set to, the mesh type needs to change to full rect, and the wrap mode needs to change to repeat. And then inside this image here, we need to change the image type from simple to sliced. And you can see now that it's kept we've used the same asset, and we can even expand this to whatever size we want, and it'll always keep the borders kind of nice. There is times where you get too close and it will start ruining the borders, but that's a limitation of 9 slicing, and you'll need to probably create a bespoke export for that. So let's say that we have this set to whatever it was. Let's move on to the next thing. We've got that set up now, that top left panel. If I grab the group, that's sitting at the top left. What's next? We have the bottom left. It's going to be very similar. We could create another empty. So right click on the canvas, create empty. And this can be our bottom left. We can click bottom left so it stays attached there. And then inside the box bottom left, we could go and copy and paste something inside there, drag it in there. It's up here, but once again, it's as simple as clicking the anchors. So getting really used to this anchor panel is going to be really helpful for you as a designer. And then that's meant to be those three there. So they're, you know, this size. Sizing is just not important right now. More important that we can get this laid out. And then we can duplicate that twice. And then instead of using a horizontal, we will use a vertical layout group. And that'll do the same. We'll disable the child force expands, increase the padding to 16, I think it was. And then make sure that the left padding and bottom padding is 16. So it's 16 pixels from every single angle. You can add more if you want. You can do whatever you want there. And then we'll sit that while that's still pinned to the bottom left. We can make this smaller because we need to make the bar sitting underneath it. So that is as simple as right click UI, and we'll make another group rather than that. We'll make it empty. Create empty. Make sure you don't create the empty outside the canvas, otherwise you'll get another issue with that rect transform. Create empty inside there, and this will be the bottom nav. So we get to do something cool with this one where we use the anchor as this one here, and that's going to stretch it along the bottom. So we set a height, but we can't actually set a width because the width is just going to be stretched to whatever the screen's going to be. To see the benefit of that, we'll find out in a second. So right click, UI, image, we have bottom nav here. And this is going to be the background. We don't need to go and export an image for this because Unity has inside the image component a color. And inside that color, you can set it to whatever you want. So in this case, you're just grabbing the image from here, D9, D99, copying it, pasting it, D9, D99. It's that simple. Then we set it to that same stretch. You could even set this background to stretch every direction because it's sitting inside a group that's already set with a height and has been stretched along the bottom. And then if this gets any larger, it'll follow that size. So cool, we have that as the background, and then we're going to make sure that any element we make sits lower because if it sits higher, it will sit behind it. So in Adam, I forget Figma, is it lower or higher? But yeah, there's a hierarchy order, and that's the most basic way to do sorting. So now we have the 4 rectangles sitting down the bottom. So we're just going to rinse and repeat that for a bunch of things. That's going to be what, 90 by 90. You can see that slicing's working okay for that. And what's the actual size? 52, 84. And then this bottom nav was 84. Back to the bottom. Now, so this sits inside. So you can use as many auto layout groups as you want to set this. You might not need to be so pixel perfect, but what we'll do is we'll try this. We'll on bottom nav, we'll set that as a horizontal layout group, and you'll notice it will go then throw a bunch of things out of whack because it's trying to set the background as one of those elements. We don't want it to do that. So we have to go into background, add a component, which is a layout element, and we set it to ignore the layout. Once it's ignore the layout, we can then set it to stretch, and it won't try to respect what's happening with the horizontal layout group. But the other thing, the box 6 will respect it. So then we can go 16 and 16. We'll go 16 and 16 from all different sizes because this is for the whole bottom nav. So let's get a couple of, what did I do down here? One long one, three short ones, and the long one is 232. That's 52. Cool. And you can see this has moved all the way over the side here, and that's because we've got the force expand. We turn both of them off, and then we add spacing, 16 pixel spacing, and then we duplicate that 3 times. And now we've got that bottom element. Now on the right hand side, we want it to go all the way to the far right hand side. Heaps of different ways that we can achieve that. We can set all of these into a group and have them on the left hand side, and then have another group on the right hand side. So it's a layout group within a layout group, much like auto layouts work when you build tile by tile. So we can definitely do that. Right click. We will create empty parent. So if you can grab a bunch of things, right click, create as an empty parent, and then that will turn all of them into a group. And this will be, I'll do everything but the background actually. Create empty parent, and this is going to be bottom left nav with all the boxes sitting inside it. So bottom left nav will need a horizontal. We can set that with nothing. Doesn't need padding because it's respecting, bottom left nav is respecting 16 pixel padding. So we'll just leave that as is. And then we could duplicate this and have bottom right nav. We can call them layouts, we can call them houses and things like that. And then we can actually use this one to child force expand. And then how would we set that all the way to the other side? Background, got that. Because the spacing would need to be, I wonder. I can't think how that would work. But you could definitely have the bottom nav and then set the left nav and the right nav not inside the same horizontal group. So we could turn this one off completely, make sure that was stuck to the bottom left with 16 pixels, 16 pixels, 16 pixels. It's all about kind of making these systems work for you, because it definitely hasn't gotten better over the time. There is also another UI system that you can use called UI Toolkit, but there are downsides to that. It's still in beta, so this is how it's suggested to be done so far. But yeah, bottom right nav, bottom left nav, and bottom nav itself doesn't actually, so you can tick and untick, and that will turn on or off the component inside here. So let's remove that. Bang, get rid of that. Set this back to the bottom left and set this back to the bottom right. And then that was just a longer bar, which doesn't matter. And then look, that's it. That's as simple as that. If we want to see what the background, what it will look like with something in the background, let's first press play. And then we can see when we load our game, this is the game in the background, and then this is the overlay here. And you can see when I change it to, let's say 4K, it expands perfectly because everything has the right size. But also if I put it to an ultra wide, you can see that these are pinned to all the corners, top left, top right, all that kind of stuff. They've turned a little bit bigger, and we can change how we can change that by setting the canvas to match width or height to shrink or to expand. So if you change it to expand, you can see that between full HD and ultra wide, everything remains the same. Things just pop out to the side. So we're building everything on this 1920 by 1080, and then we're just setting the anchors to grow and shrink. I hope you learned something. We'll talk a bit more in the next one.